Okay. Well, welcome everybody to Conscious Cafe Global this evening. My name is Gina Lazenby and I'm going to be hosting us this evening. And we have a wonderful presentation with Nick Haines. The occasion is the Chinese New Year this week and the beginning of the Year of the Tiger, the Year of the Water Tiger. Some of you may know about the Chinese animals and the elements, but Nick is going to explain what that means, and in great depth as well, because we'll learn about what's happening this cycle, which is starting now, new energies coming in, and what Nick loves to do is put that in the context of wider cycles and show us how actually this is going to be a wonderful year. I've known Nick quite some time, and he's done a number of Conscious Cafe events for us, always popular. His background is in Chinese philosophy, Chinese healing. He spent many decades looking after tens of thousands of patients, and is acupuncture and healing clinic and teaching. And through all of that, you get the opportunity to see patterns. And this is what this is about: observing patterns, naming them and sharing them. He's the founder of the 5 Institute, also co-founder of the No More Boxers movement. And let's give Nick a fantastic Conscious Cafe welcome tonight. Welcome, Nick. I'm going to hand over to you. We are recording, and you are, as co-host, you're able to share your slides, and I'm now going to add the spotlight and remove myself from the conversation. There you go.
I can now see myself.
The spotlight's on you.
Spotlight's on me. The dinner down the front, there you go. Thank you. First of all, thank you very much. I think this is my third Conscious Cafe New Year exploration. So as Gina says, there's quite a lot of content here, but what I'm going to do, and I'll pop it in the chat area, and when Gina and Judy send out the recording, they'll be able to give you this link as well. But I popped in the chat area. It's not active at the moment, that link, but just copy it down, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all the slides and everything I cover tonight, I'm going to put it on that link. So as Gina said, you can take down notes if you want to, but I'm going to give you all the slides which kind of walk you through it. So we're going to explore the water tiger year. And the first thing to say about any year is there's no lucky years or unlucky years. Every year is the same in terms of luck and good luck and bad luck, but not every year is the same in terms of its importance. And this water tiger year is actually a really important year because it's a year in which we have the foundations of things being formed. We also have transformation happening, and we also have a kind of this year is significant, as in it will make a real difference to kind of what goes on in the future. And there aren't many years that are foundation years and transition years and significant years. So I'll unpack this for you. What we're going to do is going to break at various different points, and we can take questions, etc. So I'll go through a bit of content first. And then we can kind of pause at various stages, have questions, check in, explore things. Where are we? There we go. Pop that down there, move that to there. Oops, that's good. There we go. Yeah, this is my third outing today on this content, but I've done some slightly different stuff for you, so I hope you enjoy it. So let us explore the 2020 year of the water tiger, which I'm thinking about as a year to heal and also be kind of rewarded on some level, so it'll allow us to kind of understand the content from this. I've taken from a big masterclass that I'm running on Sunday, so I pulled bits out from the masterclass and are giving them as my gift for you. So what we're going to do is we're going to break things down into 3 parts. We're going to be looking at setting the scene. Now, some of you have probably been on these Conscious Cafe things. You might have heard me speak before, but if you're new to this, I want to make sure you kind of understand how how these astrological years work and why this is such a significant one. So in part one, we're just going to set the scene. And then part two, we're going to look at kind of understanding the energy of now, what's actually happening at the moment. And in the third part, we're going to give you some, excuse me, some guiding principles for 2022, just to kind of help you along the way. So, like I said, all these slides and everything is going to be put on this particular link for you. So let's look at setting the scene. So what we're looking at here is the Chinese zodiac. The Chinese zodiac was based around observation. And the Chinese were really fastidious about observing things. They would observe things, they would write things down, the next generation would do it. And they had a written language really, really early on. So we've got kind of 3,000-4,000 years of constant observation. And what they were looking for is they were looking for patterns, repeating patterns that kind of happen one after the other. And imagine over thousands of years of people observing things, eventually they come up with a series of patterns that you see over and over again. And that's really what the kind of Chinese zodiac is. It's linked with the stars, the movement, the planets, but also kind of characteristics. So the way these years work is that each year is related to one particular animal, and the animal has certain kind of characteristics to it. But the year is also related to one of the 5 elements or one of the 5 energies. So basically, a year kind of operates, so they go in kind of 60-year cycles. So this water tiger year occurred 60 years ago. That was the last time we were in this year. So depending upon your age and where you are, we often have one go at a year when we're really at a kind of active phase in our life, or at a reflective phase in our life, or at the beginning. So, but we rarely have kind of two lots of it within our full power. So the last time I was in a water tiger year, I was 3 or 4. I was 4. So this year is slightly more significant for me. So the last time we were here was kind of 1962. Now, each year has a theme to it, a flow to an undercurrent. It has like an energy to it, like a vibration to it, a set of characteristics to each year. Now, each block of time, each of these 12-year blocks, that also has a theme, a undercurrent, a vibration and energy to it, a set of characteristics to it. And now we're currently in a block of time that's dominated by metal energy. And you'll see why that's significant, because I'm going to explain a little later about what that means. But basically, it starts with 2 metal energy years. And what that does is it sets the scene. It says, okay, this is what we're going to be exploring and being examined on. And then it ends with 2 metal energy years, and that's saying, okay, well, let's test and see how we got on. So out of 12 years, 4 of them are metal energy. So it's a dominant block of time. Now, these animals and the energies and the year, they kind of have a vibration to them, and they vibrate and resonate with kind of you as an individual. Now, this can be really, we sometimes think, okay, so I've got this year, I've got this energy, I've got this animal, I've got this block of time, and they're resonating with me. Well, what part of me? Are they resonating with my Chinese astrology, my kind of Western stars, and my numerology, my character, my nature, the fact that I was born at this time, or I have this personality? And if we were to try and make sense of these years from all these different things, it gets to be really complicated. So when someone says, well, I'm an earth pig, well, how's this year going to be for me? It gets to be kind of less useful. So I think a really good way to understand how you are going to interact with this year. Remember, this year is kind of just, it has an energy to it, and it's about how we decide to play it. So I think a really good way for you to understand how you will interact with the year is through something called the vitality test. And the vitality test you can take, it's completely free. And I developed it over kind of the last kind of 35 years. And it's a way to understand the balance of these 5 energies within you. And what the ancient Chinese believed is that when we came to Earth, we made a promise to do something. And within your vitality test profile are these balance of these 5 energies, and within it is everything you need to do to fulfill your promise, whatever it is you're here to explore. And there are also a few kind of challenges. But so with the vitality test, that's a really good way to understand how you're going to interact with the year. So when you look at the vitality test, you can see some energies are kind of stronger, more dominant. You can see these kind of arrows kind of moving out. There's more energy there. Where you have the more dominant energies, that tends to be our focus or our way of seeing the world. Whereas where you have energies that are lower, and you can see these kind of dents going in, this collapsing thing, that tends to be where we have our kind of blind spots or our lack of focus. So it's really good within years to be thinking, oh, in this year, this is going to be my focus, or this year is going to be my blind spots. And this particular year, it's really important to know what our blind spots are. If you want to take the vitality test, like I say, it's completely free. Just go to 5institute.com and it's there for you. Okay, so let's pull this together for you, because I just said a lot of different things. So we have the energy of the year represented by the element. Then you have the character of the animal comes into the year. That gives it certain qualities. Then you've got the block of time, metal energy, that will give it certain qualities. And then we've got you interacting with it, represented by your vitality test profile. So we've got a lot of different things going on here. So I'm just going to kind of break things down for you and set some context to this. So like I said, this year is the same as 1962 energetically. That was a water tiger year and a metal energy block of time, etc. But what matters here is context. The way these years play out in terms of context matters. I mean, the last time in 1962, they'd kind of, in that 60-year block of time, they'd come out of 2 world wars. They were getting over grief and loss, and they were looking to see how the world could build out and play on. And to a certain extent, we've had some similar experiences. We've had trauma and loss and etc. And we're also looking to see how we would like the world to be. So that's why these years that we've just been in are kind of foundation and kind of like transformational years that have significance, because whatever happens now will carry on through right through time and actually way beyond our lifetime. So the context we've also got going on, because this is a kind of, we happen to be born into a very complex time, because what we've got going on is we've got some large shifts in other areas. So these years that we're talking about, it lasts for 12 months, and you have a kind of year cycle or a decade, whatever. So you've got those shorter cycles, but we also have some very, very long, slow cycles that go over hundreds and hundreds of years. And so we just look, we've got a cycle around geopolitics, consumerism, spirituality. And each one of these areas of life are in a particular energy, which gives it a certain set of characteristics. So geopolitics, it's in the kind of fire energy. Fire energy is, am I loved? Do you love me? Am I popular? It's about being in the moment, about popular. So our geopolitics is about popularity. It's a democracy. We vote based on who we love, who we like, who says the nicest things. But the whole idea of it is very, very, very short-lived. And consumerism, spirituality, that again has certain characteristics. Now, what is unique about this experience in time that we have, and I have gone right back, and I cannot see a time where we've had all 3 of these very big, slow cycles all trying to move into a different energy at the same time. So we're trying to move from the geopolitics, we're trying to move from this fire energy, love me democracy, into a form of geopolitics and government that's more earth energy, and that's more about communities, and it's bottom up led. And again, consumerism, spirituality, they're all trying to move. So we've got a massive flux of in 3 enormous grey areas. And the challenge can be is that humans can struggle with change. That's the very nature. So one of the things that we'll see as these big cycles are happening is we see as human beings, some people think, oh, I'm really struggling with this, and people are trying to hold on to the way that things are, become tribal, do certain things. It's a challenge for many people. And it's been compounded, this change has been compounded over the last few years, really, because we've had this kind of metal energy block of time. And metal energy has qualities to it, one of which is it's related to autumn, to fall. And in autumn and fall, things kind of disconnect, they end, they finish. Metal energy is about loss, it's about grief, it's about connecting with the lungs, it's about working out what you value, what matters to you. But it has this sense of loss to it and isolation, and like something is perhaps being taken away. So we've had 2 years of loss, isolation, metal energy, etc. And one of the things with metal energy, there is a desire for simplicity. And one way to have simplicity is to have black and white thinking. You're good, you're bad, you're this, you're that. So we've been kind of driven, building up to this time of becoming more and more black and white thinking. People are becoming more and more concerned about change and tribal. And then we've also, in the last year, for example, we've had a metal ox year. And when oxes kind of get under stress and feel trapped, then what they'll do is they'll fundamentally lock horns. So we've seen locking of horns because we've had this kind of ox year we've been going on with this metal energy and sense of thing, plus this big change. And then we've also had, before that, we had a metal rat year. And rats are lovely, kind creatures. To a certain extent, 2020 was easier than last year because rats are very resourceful. So we had lots of resourcefulness last year in 2020 compared to last year, which was kind of quite ploddy. But the problem with rats is, although they're very kind and they're very resourceful and they scurry around, they get through things, over things and around things, they just kind of get on with it. But the problem is with when they get kind of backed into a corner, they can really become quite kind of vicious and quite kind of nasty. So we've had these things going on, and we've just moved into a year in which we get an opportunity, and water energy is related to fear. These next 2 years, we get an opportunity to be fearless, to really step into things. You know, this is what matters to me, and it's a time. In water energy years, we get to overcome our fears, to face our fears, to be braver, to be stronger. And we also have the tiger, which is a very courageous, strong, brave creature, set of characteristics. So this is a great year to deal with our fears and get over things. But it's also a year that some people will get actually really quite stressed about because of change and different things that are going on. So what I want to do now is I want to just pause at this particular stage, because I want to just kind of move people. We're going to just nip into kind of a breakout room, and we're going to do that for kind of just 5 minutes or so. So that with the breakout rooms, you'll be assigned to a certain room with another person, or three people might be there. And the important thing with a breakout room is when you arrive in the breakout room and you find yourself with someone else or 2 other people, the really important thing is to look happy that they're there. There's a balance here. What you don't want to do is go into the breakout room and think, oh, we're really happy to see you, and you're going to go too happy, because that kind of is a bit crazy. So just look pleased when you see people. So there we are. So what I would love to do just for a few minutes is just for people to kind of voice out some of the. So feel free just to raise your hand or unmute yourself and just share what was said in your room or what you voiced, how you would want the world to be. The more we say this, you know, it's that kind of creation. So anybody, Marianne. I can see you waving.
Hi, sorry, I've lost my little hand on the thing. I was my partner in crime in the other room. We were very much of the same mind. So we were talking about community and equality, and we're really pleased to be alive now. And the old order coming down. We want health and organic food and creativity, and definitely equality, not haves and have-nots, and just more sort of peace and love. Yeah, just respect. Basically, yeah, a nicer kind of place to live, peace and caring for one another. So
Mm.
that was us.
Love it.
Anyway, me and whoever. Yeah.
Hurrah to that.
Yeah.
Any other thing? Thank you so much for sharing that. That's wonderful. Any other kind of, anyone else want to kind of voice? So we've got Violet. Do you want to go?
Yeah, I'll go now. In our room, we talked about what I would like to see is people being more aware of their own internal dialogue and how that is just a story that the mind is telling them. And more people are aware that, you know, they're in a story or caught up in a story and it's not real, it's just we make it up. The less we become kind of, this is true, and are more open to other people having a different point of view from us without becoming angry and, you know, getting into kind of battles with other people.
Yeah.
Trivial things that we're making up. And the other person who was with me wanted an abundance of peace in the world. Yeah.
Lovely.
And also one other thing, if we've got time, is like just being aware of, you know, I'm in my late 60s and it occurred to me recently that I really want to use this time productively because, you know, I'm in the older part. So I was kind of thinking about some kind of accountability group so that people who are in a similar age group can come together and kind of say, I'm going to do this and actually do it to make sure that the time is used. Louise, I don't know if you want to add to that because I think I've said what I said rather than what you...
Yeah, Louise. No, you don't want to. That's fine. Let's go, Diane. I can't work out who went first, but Diane.
Hello. Okay. I think both of us were aiming for well-being. And the end, I'll start at the end. The end of the conversation was that we both believe in magic, and that actually, so I go back to the beginning. What I thought originally was I'd like everybody in the world to be aware that we're all connected. There's just one person here, really, and that therefore let's be nice and therefore work towards well-being, and that way we'll do the magic and save the world.
Love it, love it, love it.
It was Will Run. Yeah.
Joanna, yeah, thank you for that. Sorry, Diane, did you want to carry on? Did I shut you off too quickly? No. Okay. Joanna.
Hello, everyone. Yes, I think probably a lot of overlap between the opinions of the people here today. It's probably no surprise. But yeah, we felt just a move towards people being more accepting of alternative ways of being and living. And I particularly am very keen on seeing a future where people are more respectful of any other living creature, both plant and animal. I get very upset about that. So yeah, and to realize that just because we've done something for a long time doesn't mean it's the only way and it's the right way. So open-mindedness and lateral thinking for how we could do things better.
Brilliant. Love it. Love it. And Elizabeth, we'll just finish off with your wise words.
Okay, thank you. Well, we came to the conclusion, as well as peace, which we discussed, we were also looking for simplicity, collaboration, and above all, for a free world again, for freedom.
Yeah.
With the whole world having freedom now to be.
Yeah.
That sums it up, basically.
Love it. Love it. Thank you for that, everybody. Thank you. Now, if we think about it, the last time we were in this energetic phase, this energetic year, was kind of like the 1960s. And lots of things, and I've been doing these things this is my 14th year for doing these kind of live webinars and calls. And I often ask that question. And there has been a sea change in what people decide that they want to have as we've moved into these years. So we might think we've always wanted peace and love. We've always wanted community and well-being. Well, the conversations haven't been about prioritizing that. So we're seeing the kind of energy, the kind of vibrational state we've got will be reminiscent of the 1960s, of doing things differently, communities, love, peace, etc. different forms of health, doing things in a different way. And that's no coincidence, because the experience that they went through running up to this period of time, the 60s, and what we've been through has been very similar things, because we've been energetically into very similar years. So it's no coincidence. So thank you very much for that, and we'll feed this into the content. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen again, and I'm going to run through something that I developed called conscious questions. And conscious questions are a really good way to help you unconsciously, consciously in your life to deal with stuff that kind of goes on. They're very simple, but they're really, really powerful. So let me just share my screen again. And thank you very much for sharing. Kaboom. There we go. So we're going to be looking, so we've got lots of change going on. We've got people who are going to really struggle with change. We've got lots of ups and downs. We've got different things. We've got a busy time. So this is a tool and a technique that we can use for coping with change or anything. So they, as I say, they're called kind of conscious questions, and they're a kind of a unique way to kind of stop unwanted thoughts, change feelings, clear limiting beliefs, resolve the past, just feel better about yourself, and to, in this example, cope with change. And I've written about them in 2 books, Art of Kind and Flowing Relationships, which is a really nice book for this time, and then The Story of Boxes, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And what that's about is how we pigeonhole people into stereotypes, say, well, you know what they're like, you know what the Americans are like, you know what the Italians are like, you know what men are like, you know what women are like. And the book is really kind of an antidote to this, this whole putting this black and white thinking about human beings. So anyway, conscious questions are in both of those books. And conscious questions developing as a result of looking at the 5 energies, and each of the 5 energies has a particular soul to it, a particular component to it. The water energy is related to our willpower. Our wood energy is related to our imagination, our ability to be creative, to think differently. Fire energy is our conscious mind. Don't worry about the energies too much, but just this is where they come from, is our conscious mind. Earth energy is related to our intellect. And then hidden deep under the ground in the thing is our unconscious mind, the thing that sits below the surface. Now, I won't go into it now, but if you look at the Chinese characters, they say something very interesting about the nature of each one of these, and that's their form of communication. And basically, what happens is that your unconscious mind and your imagination, they don't hear statements, they only hear questions. Your kind of willpower, you can go, come on, I can do this. Your willpower will react to that. Your conscious mind will hear a statement. Your intellect will hear a statement. However, the unconscious mind and the imagination, they only hear questions. And they have to answer any question that they're given. That's their job. And they won't see or consider anything else. And they don't care how the answers make you feel. And if you keep asking the same question over and over again, your imagination will just start making stuff up. So I said a lot of things there really quickly, so let me just break that down. So your unconscious mind and your imagination only answer questions. They don't hear statements. And when they answer a question, they have to do that. And they don't care whether the answer makes you feel good or whether the answer makes you feel bad. They'll just answer that question. So if you ask the question, God, why am I so useless? Then your unconscious mind, your imagination will say, well, you're so useless because, and it'll give you the answer. And you keep asking it, your imagination will keep making it up. And then often, so whatever happens. So one of the characteristic things we have as human beings is that we can go up and down in our emotional state. So say you're kind of struggling slightly and you go, oh my God, why am I struggling so much? And you ask that question, and your unconscious mind, which is the part that kind of really controls how we think, gives you all the answers to why you're struggling so much. And then you start to feel not quite as good because you've had those answers, and you think, oh my God, what's wrong with me? And then it says, well, let me tell you what's wrong with me. Saying, oh God, why am I struggling to cope? Well, let me tell you why you're struggling to cope. So we can kind of whiz down this spiral quite quickly as a result of the questions we're asking to try and work out how we're feeling and what's actually going on. So the opposite of that is to use conscious questions, to use questions that are actually going to be constructive and help you. Ask questions that are going to consciously change you in some way. Now, to construct a conscious question, it's kind of really simple. There's an art to them. They can get to be quite sophisticated in what they're trying to do, particularly if they're trying to deal with internal conflicts within ourselves, where one part of us wants one thing and another part wants something else. But in their simplest forms, they're really easy. So you just think, I'm like this, and I want to be like this. So say you're thinking, I'm really struggling to cope with this. So you might then say, well, why can I cope with this? Now, the secret with conscious questions is to ask them with power, clarity, and intention. So you go, look, why can I cope with this? Why can I handle this? And conscious mind, your imagination has to say why you can cope with it, why you can handle it. You might make it slightly more sophisticated. You might say, why has my past equipped me for this moment? Your unconscious mind, your imagination has to give an answer as to why your past has equipped you for this moment. And that gets to be useful. You think, no, this is why I can cope, this is why I can handle it. This is why my past has equipped me for this moment. Now, what you can't do with the conscious question is you can't go against your values or fundamentally try and trick your unconscious mind. So if you're really stressed and you're anxious and you're really, really kind of worried about something, to ask the question, why am I not worried? It creates an internal conflict and a discomfort, because your anxiety is coming from your unconscious, and to say, why am I not anxious? It really doesn't do it. So you might do a question like, why is it normal to be worried in a situation like this? And why will I cope? And why has my past equipped me with this moment? So you can normalize something and then put in these questions underneath. But you can't clash against a reality. And conscious questions are easier to say, why? Tell me exactly why, how can I handle this? How can I deal with this? What aspect of my past? You can use anything. The kind of three common responses to conscious questions are, the first one is it could, as a response, it'd feel like it doesn't fit or it clashes. So if I was to ask the question, why am I the richest person in the world? The interesting thing is, initially, that is going to create a clash. You think, well, I'm not the richest person in the world. But because the unconscious mind has to answer that over time, I've asked this question a lot within these presentations, and now my unconscious mind comes back and says, well, you're the richest person in the world because you have all these people that you love and they love you and you do these things. And what is money? Yeah, I am the richest person in the world as far as I'm concerned, from my experience. So eventually it does come round. But often they'll kind of clash. Or you could just have a kind of neutral feeling. You ask the question and it goes, yeah. And that could be because it was too complex, or it didn't have any kind of meaning to it, or you didn't really give it any feeling when you asked it, or you didn't concentrate. So you go, oh, why can I handle this? It's not the same as, why can I handle this? What aspect of my past will allow me to do this? Or because the unconscious perhaps needs a little bit of time to answer, to kind of resolve a few things. And then the third thing is to get a very kind of positive or uplifting feeling. And I've worked with these for kind of 35 years, and I've worked with people that have had really kind of quite severe mental illness, different things. And what they do over time is they change people on a kind of cellular level. So you could, when you ask a question, you could have some words, but you could also just have a change in feeling. You could feel calmer, you could feel more peaceful, you could have a sense, you could have a knowing, or you could have this kind of cellular change that your soul, your body, your cells fundamentally change, and you just feel completely different. So we look at some practical examples, and this is a typical question that will invoke some words. So if you ask the question, and I want you just to kind of close your eyes here and ask this question, why is it my fundamental right to make mistakes? Why is it my fundamental right to make mistakes? And then just put in the chat area what comes up when you ask that question. Why is it my fundamental right to make mistakes? Okay, that's a typical question that we will get words to. Okay. Another really kind of useful question, conscious question at this particular time or any time of great change is to ask the question, why is it okay not to know everything at this stage? So what that does is it has an assumption, it's an assumptive statement that at some stage you will know, you will know everything, but at this stage you don't, but it's okay not to. So why is it okay not to know everything at this stage? At this stage you will, you don't, but later you will, and it's okay. And it's okay. So it's a really useful question, particularly if you've got a lot of earth energy in your profile. Then we can think, oh, I don't understand what's going on. I don't understand, etc. Just say, why is it okay? Why is it okay not to know everything at this stage? And why will I cope with that? And why will I handle that? And etc. Now, we have had a period of time where we had locked horns and we've got the remnants of kind of that going on. So within our states of conflict, there are kind of really useful questions you can ask. You can ask the question, why is it important to remember that we're all different? So you're in this thing with someone, this crowd, and they've got this and you've got that, and you say, why is it important to remember that we're all different? And our unconscious, which has far more influence on us than our conscious mind, will answer that question or have a sense that we need to remember that we're all different. Or you might ask, how can I show my love in this particular situation? Or you might ask, and I think this is a really interesting one, might say, you're in a situation of conflict or in a situation of difficulty, or you're struggling, and you might just ask the question, within this state of conflict that we have to resolve. And that's very interesting that so many people, when we talked about how we wanted the world to be, that it was about more peace and love and resolution coming together and different views to be able to exist. So in this situation where you're stuck with it, you might ask, what would the highest version of me do now? And a really useful question to get a contrast to that is you say, and what would the lowest version of me do now? And that combination of those two questions, what would the highest version of me and what would the lowest version of me do now? And then as a being, you can make a choice as to how you want to operate within those two extremes. Okay, so we can take some questions around conscious questions later, but that's just a really useful tool. Like I said, they're in the different books. I run webinars about them. You take the vitality test, email me, whatever. We can always look at those, but they're a really kind of useful tool. And like I say, they have changed people's states in an incredible way. So let's look at part 2. Let's understanding the energy of now, because that was just a tool to help you with what we might see as a little bit of black and white thinking that remains behind. So understanding the energy of now. So we are in a water tiger year. So it's broken into 2 parts. So first of all, let's look at water energy and let's see what that actually means. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the essence of water energy, and we're going to pick out 3 really strong characteristics that we're going to see going on. So the first one is consequences. So in this year and next year, we're going to see consequences. Now, every energy is related to a particular season, and water energy is related to winter. And the ancient Chinese would observe that, say you were a farmer and you failed to plant your seeds, or you didn't look after them, or you didn't bother to harvest them, then in winter you basically starved. There are consequences. Whereas if you looked after the seeds and you planted them, looked after them, you watered them and you harvested them, then actually winter is an abundant time. There are consequences that are really good. So the important thing within this year and next year, there will be consequences, and consequences can be good or bad. And that is really about what we do as individuals, rather than some outside malevolent force giving us consequences. It's really this year and next year is really about us looking at how we handle things. So if you eat well and you meditate and you take exercise and you look after yourself and you don't get into conflicts and you look at the peace and the love and you do the things that I'm going to suggest, then you're going to be more likely to be healthy. Whereas if you don't look after yourself, you do all these things and you have conflict, then there will be consequences. we will certainly see some consequences. Excuse me, we'll certainly see some consequences, as we've already started to see as this year starts to build up. We're going to see consequences coming out of our political behavior that has gone on. So consequences is a big one, but it's not one to be worried about, because it's how we get to play and grow. The next thing that we'll see within water energy, this water energy year next year, is something about kind of authority and trust. So people with a lot of water energy, we tend to trust them. They have an authority to them. And so much so that news agents and things will often pick news anchors that have a lot of water energy. And if you have a lot of water energy, you tend to have a really quite a square jaw, a strong square jaw. So they'll particularly pick female news anchors with lots of water energy. And that's because we trust people with a lot of water energy, because they're asking the question, is it safe? Are we safe? They're thinking about consequences, bigger perspective. So in terms of if you're selling the news, you want someone to be presenting the news that we would naturally trust and they would naturally have authority to them. So it's a classic one that is picked. Then the third thing about the essence of water energy that is going to be playing out this year and next year is something about kind of about purpose and leaving its mark. Now, if you think about water as a substance, it's the only substance that really leaves its mark on the earth. Everything else is very transitory. It kind of comes and goes, whether it's kind of wood or fire or all those things, they just kind of are very transitory compared to what water does for the earth. So think about the Grand Canyons. Think about the valleys that have been carved out as the kind of glaciers move through them. So the earth is formed and shaped and changed as a result of water and water energy. So this year, these 2 years, it's got stuff going on around purpose. It's got stuff going on around legacy. And what we do here in these 2 years will leave its mark on the earth. So let's look at the tiger as the other side of it, because that's the other half of this year, and we'll be pulling it together for you. So the essence of the tiger. So the first thing about tigers is they're very kind of brave, confident, and they kind of blaze new trails. Now we've just had an ox year, and they are very traditional. They don't like anything new, and there's almost a fight to hold on to tradition. Whereas the tigers, the kind of blaze new trails, it's brave, confident. So it's a much, much, much happier, easier year to be living with. Tigers are also very kind of dignified, trustworthy, powerful leaders. And that dignity is about sovereignty and royalty and highest versions. We've also got the trust going on as well. And we've also got that kind of power going on as well. And remember, with water, there is no more powerful substance than that. So we've got this tiger, dignified, trustworthy. And the third thing about tigers is they're kind of passionate and they absolutely love a challenge. So again, we've got that really useful energy coming in this particular year. The slight issue I think we need to kind of watch out for is the kind of never giving up. And that is a strong characteristic of a tiger year, or a tiger as is characteristic. And the problem with never giving up is if we are still stuck in that metal energy, black and white thinking, we're still stuck in tribalism. People are really frightened. And so people never give up their black and white thinking. They never give up their position. They never give up their tribal nature. Then it's problematic. And that is a possibility. We might see that people become entrenched through fear. That's the emotion of water energy, entrenched through fear, black and white thinking, through the past, stuck in the past, never giving up. And that is a challenge. I think this is only a really big thing we need to be concerned about. The other thing with the never giving up is water energy is about our reserves and our resources, about sustainability, long-term picture, big perspective, but these reserves and resources. So if you never gave up because of the tiger, there is a danger that you deplete your reserves and your resources. And we've had a tough couple of years. So we've got to watch that balance between keeping the water energy reserves and resources, keeping sustainable, keeping things balanced, working on the big picture. Remember, the Grand Canyon didn't happen overnight, so it's this steady action, but just never giving up could be a slight challenge. So there's the water tiger, these qualities, and let's kind of pull them together. So we've got the kind of water energy consequences, authority, trust, the purpose, leaving a mark. Then we've got the tiger with its kind of brave, confident, blazing new trails, dignified royalty, a double amplification of kind of trust. We've got the kind of powerful leaders, more power. We've got passionate, loving a challenge, and then this never giving up. So you kind of pull this together, and it gives a really fantastic year if you do certain things, you kind of handle certain things. So let me look at what I regard as the kind of 3 guiding principles for 2020. Now, I've read and seen in different places that, oh yeah, you've got to watch out for tiger years. You know, tigers are vicious, they're hiding in the undergrowth, there are dangers. Water energy tiger, water tiger years, oh, it's even more water energy about consequences and danger and fear, and all this idea that there is some sort of this year has got some sort of danger external side to it. And I think that is actually complete nonsense. This year is an incredible year for us to set the scene, but it really involves us shifting our thinking from there is this tiger year out there, water tiger, but instead flipping it around to say, well, very simple, was we individually and collectively need to become water tigers, the very best of water tigers. Because if you look at those qualities, that's phenomenal to have. So if we kind of look at some of the 3 things I think you need to do to be a water tiger. The first one is you need to choose who has authority in your life. Let me explain what I mean by this. So in the morning, if you were to get certain newspapers, or you were to listen to the radio or listen to the news or do different things, in effect, what you're doing is you're giving authority to the newspapers or the radio or the television or Twitter or whatever. You're giving authority to that space to decide how you're going to feel in that moment, because you're being influenced from the outside. So the whole thing about this water tiger, the tiger with that sovereignty, that sovereign power, the authority, water with its own authority in itself, that's the kind of key. We have to decide who has authority in our life and take back that, particularly our mental health, our well-being, our sense of purpose, to have that authority ourselves. And it is really, there's going to be bits of drama, and if you give your authority to the drama, then you've given away your power. And that isn't what this year is about. It's about choosing who has authority in your life. The next thing to really look at with the water tiger year is you need to kind of rise above and lean into your power. So we've had particularly 2020 was quite a scrappy year. The Ox year was quite kind of scrappy. There's lots of stuff going on. Whereas what we're meant to be doing now is to rising above that and leaning into our power. And we've got an enormous amount of help to do that. Water energy by its very nature is powerful. There is no force like water. When it wants to go somewhere, it will go somewhere. It will go through it, round it, over it. It will have an unstoppable power. So you have power this year. Tigers are also incredibly powerful. They have this regal sense, this powerful leader. So we've got all this power. We also then have the ability to rise above the stuff that's kind of going on. So water energy tends to have this reflective quality, and every energy has a position in a form of vision. Metal energy, its form of vision is like detachment, to get some distance from things. So we've had detachment and distance. And what happens is when we get that detachment and distance, what we automatically afterwards is we do it well, we start to move into perspective. And that's what water energy does. It gives us perspective. So people with a lot of water energy will often like be historians or academics or futurists or learning from the past. They tend to keep a much bigger picture as opposed to being down on the earth scrapping around. So this is a phenomenal year for you to be able to kind of rise up and say, okay, how do we want to collectively rise up? How do I want to rise up? And how do I want to grasp my power? And one way to do that, and I'll do with these slides, you'll be able to see that link, and I'll make it clickable within the PDF. I do a particular video that looks at the physicality of water energy. So every energy has a physical bodily state to it. And in this video, I explain that if you can get into the physical state of what it would be like if you had a lot of water energy, it gives you that sense and it starts to boost the energy up. So I've got that video will kind of say, I'm not sure I'll be able to rise up and be in my power. I'm not sure I'll be able to kind of do that. Well, if you step into that physicality of water energy, it will make it much, much easier. Other things like getting plenty of sleep, getting plenty of rest, etc., will give you more of that power. The other thing we've got really to help in terms of rising up and leaning into our power is that, again, we've got this kind of very regal animal that's here with us and very, very powerful. Remember, these years only happen once every 60 years. So it's only every 60 years we get the most powerful animal, the kind of represented as the kind of royalty within the animals, with the most powerful element, energy, water, and you put them together and you have an incredible year that occurs only once every 60 years to be able to rise up and lean into our power. The final thing that we should really be doing and looking within this Tiger year is to align our actions with our soul's calling. And this is again, water energy is about leaving our mark on the earth. But if you look at the Chinese character for water energy, it's made up of these two characters. So every energy has a spiritual side to it. So the spiritual side to water energy is this Ming Men, and we translate it roughly as purpose or willpower. But if you look at the characters, they really say something important. Remember, we're in a water energy year now, so this energy is coming in. And what this character here on the left-hand side means, heaven and earth and to voice. And this is like an official stamp, like when you have a contract, you stamp a document, and then beside that is a banner. So what this character means is when you came from heaven to earth, you said you would do something. There was an official contract that was stamped and a banner that you were being given to walk behind. So it's like what you promised to do when you came to earth. So, and then beside that on the right-hand side are like doors, swinging doors, you kind of entering a place. So as I said, the ancient Chinese believed that when we came to earth, we made a promise to do something, and this character represents it. Now, this is a year where we individually and collectively step into that. And it's the easiest year to do that. Now, the important thing about this idea of purpose, not to kind of get hung up on it or thinking, oh my goodness, I need to have this big purpose. You know, sometimes for many people, their purpose in their exploration or what they've come to earth to do this time is to work out how to love themselves or to be more peaceful or to explore a loving, close relationship. And we're given tests and tests and contrasts to be able to do that. But it doesn't mean your purpose has to be that you rattle and change the world and you leave. It could just be learning to love yourself, or practicing being a good parent, or practicing in one part of your life struggling as a parent to then help other people. So but this is a year in which we will be asked to kind of follow our soul's calling. We've also had 2 years where we've been exploring what matters to us, what's important to us. And that's giving us some guidance in this year as to what we're perhaps in terms of what matters to us. So purpose is a difficult word for you. Just think this year is about, and next year is about doing what matters for you and what matters to you. So within that breakout rooms, when you were saying, okay, how do you want the world to be? What matters to you? This is a year where that plays out. And the character below is a beautiful character, je, meaning willpower. So we think of willpower as being, come on, come on. But this character is beautiful. What it is like, this is a blade of grass pushing up through the earth. And below it, this is a symbol for heart. So what this says is, what is in your heart that you're going to bring out into the world? You're going to push out into the world. So again, it mixes with this promise, what matters to you, what's important to you. And this again is about voicing from the heart, bringing out to the heart, which again, why I got you into the breakout room, for you just to do that bit of je, that willpower. This is what I want to have. So this is an absolutely phenomenal year. This is a year to, like I say, align your actions with your soul's calling. And it could be just to love yourself or to whatever it might be. And this isn't a year to say, oh, I need to do it all. It's about kind of planting the seeds and saying, this is what I would like to have. Because remember, the kind of Grand Canyon was not kind of built in an afternoon. It started with a slow trickle. And we're moving into a period of time. What we decide now will influence the next 60 years. What happens now? So you think in the 1960s, Kennedy said the big thing that society and the world needs to do and countries need to do, and there was a big meeting all about it, the big thing we need to do as a world is to be successful, is to have ever-increasing GDP, ever-increasing economic growth. And we're going to do that by consuming and producing. We're going to turn, everyone's going to get jobs, and we're going to buy things and consume things and produce, and everything is based around constant growth, economic growth. That was right at the beginning of the 60s. And we have to say, well, how did that work out? How was that? So this is a time to reflect, to think how we want it, and perhaps do something different. Also in the 1960s, there was a big shift in the civil rights movement to say, okay, well, and in America, there's a kind of big fundamental change. The Civil Rights Act was brought in, but it was this part we're in now when people start to say, actually, you know what? This segregation is wrong at a fundamental core level. We want the world to be fundamentally different. Of course, there was conflict, there was black and white thinking, there was all stuff that went on, but it is a period of time in which we decide how we want the world to be. And we are living with the consequences of what happened 60 years ago when they decided how they want the world to be. And if perhaps we had a peace and love had carried on a bit better. But we haven't had nuclear wars, which is a good thing. So here are the things that you need to do for the Water Tiger year. Choose who has authority in your life. I suggested you rise above and kind of lean into your power. Just when in doubt, just kind of, what would the highest version of me do now? Use those conscious questions. I actually am more powerful. And align your actions with your soul's calling, or just say, actually, I'm going to be involved with and do and say the things that matter to me, that I've worked out, this is important to me, and how I would like the world to be. Voice it, say it, call it out, say how you want it to be. And that is the ultimate thing about being a water tiger, to do those things. And if I had to sum it down and take it down into kind of 2 words that I think you need to think of at this whole year, and those are to say, I choose. I choose. This is what we're being asked to do. So the 5 Institute, we're all about internal and external cultures. How do you live with yourself, and how do we live together? And we choose kindness. Our approach to things is say, okay, let's try and get more kindness going. Kindness for ourselves, other people, being kind to yourself, being kind to others, and being kind to the planet. And I have never met anybody that is too kind. I've met lots of people whose kindness is out of balance, and they're too kind to other people, or not kind enough to themselves, and we kind of forget to be kind to the planet, or we focus about being super kind to the planet, we're not kind to ourselves. So it's about getting that balance right. So yeah, we're about internal and external cultures. How do we live with yourself? How do we live together? That's what we do. So you focus this time on those 3 guidelines, and ultimately say, look, you get to choose. We get to choose individually and collectively how the world will be way, way beyond our lifetime. And that feels like a big responsibility. The important thing is to remember that we are not alone. We are doing this collectively with groups like Conscious Cafe, stuff at the 5 Institute, other places. So come together. So I hope you found that helpful. Like I say, this content is taken from a masterclass that I've run run on Sunday, depending when you listen to this. So thank you very, very much. So let's stop sharing.
Yeah, let's see if we have some.
There we go.
Oh, wonderful.
Ooh, that was a lot, wasn't it?
It was a lot.
It was a lot. You have the recording. You've got the recording. You've got the slides.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I just love the fact that this wheel turns. It's 60 years. You know, for those of us over 60. Yeah. And some people are 60 this year. It's an amazing year to be 60.
Yeah.
That wheel turns. This is just not once every 12 years. These two powerful energies together that really landed. This is the most powerful animal, the tiger, and the most powerful energy, the one that leaves its mark on the earth. Those two energies coming together this year is fantastic. So let's see if we've got some questions. People are reeling.
So feel free to kind of, if you want to kind of raise your hand. Some people like to type, other people like just kind of raise their hand and say, have you got any questions? Jessica, bang, straight away. I saw you there. Bam. Go for it.
Yeah, hi there. Thanks. That was fantastic. I've got a bit of an odd question, which might not relate to this. Because I was around the first time. I was just coming up. I'm born on the 5th of February, so it's around about that sort of time of year.
Ooh.
And I was 5 years old then. And I remember it quite clearly, what was going on in my life then. But my question is more related to next year, because I remember the year after that was a very devastating year. It was personally, but it was globally, because Kennedy was killed and it changed everything around the world. And it's still reverberating. We haven't recovered from that on lots of levels. So my question is, what can we do with the energies that we have this year in order to be able to prepare for and maybe help with what may be coming along next year, because that's going to be another 60 years as well. And that was a very tumultuous, very frightening time.
That's a great question.
Yeah, great question. You're right. I mean, next year we've got rabbits, and rabbits tend to multiply, so we've got a bit of a multiplication. There's a multiplication in terms of what we do. So one of the problems with that period in the 1960s was that the black and white thinking, the division continued. There wasn't a, and that's why I'm doing, like I say, this is my third webinar today. I did 4 yesterday, and I'm just constantly doing this stuff. And it's partly because we have to kind of not fall into the trap of that kind of black and white thinking, that polarization. So there was, the thing we have to do now is create a situation where all things can exist, different views can exist, they can be fine, and nobody is right and nobody is wrong. It's just an opinion. And I apologize, I can't see, but we were talking about everything is a story. So we have to be careful of the stories we tell ourselves. It's why I wrote the book, The Art of Kind and Flowing Relationships, how we have relationships, and the story of boxes, the good, the bad, and the ugly, when we put each other in boxes. Well, you're like this and we're like that. They're both books that are written for this moment in time in order to resolve it. So I think we need to very, very clearly voice and be open and flexible and adaptable to other people's thing. And if our energy is that way, then they're more likely to be that way as well. And the conscious questions help. In the masterclass, we're going to be talking about preformed thinking, listening, and responding, as in we're in the conversation, but we're actually preformed from the past, and we're not in the proper conversation. So there are things like that, but the headline is we just have to be aware that we've had black and white thinking division. We have to find a way to not let that continue into the next few years.
Do you feel, if you don't mind my asking, so I don't want to take up too much of everyone's time, that a lot of the black and white thinking has come about because of rampant censorship, not just over this period, but over a long period of time. And where there's been a lot of censorship and political correctness, etc., and that tends to polarize people because some are allowed to speak, others aren't allowed to speak, and then it makes people stick more closely to their views, even if they may have been much more flexible in their views. If we could have debates, free to have debates.
What you have to, one of the things you have to recognize at this particular time is that in 2024, we have a wood dragon year, and dragons are the only creatures that are mythical. And what they do is they bring messages from heaven down to earth. So 2012 was a water dragon year, so it was lots of stuff around our purpose and what matters and why we're here, which is why 2012 was such a significant year for many cultures. But 2024 is a wood dragon year, and wood is about innovation, it's about change, it's about disruption. So in 2024, we've got some very new thinking and ideas coming in, and there is there will be a defense of how things were. Let's keep the status quo. So yeah, censorship is an issue. However, I think the biggest issue is that, and I'm not into conspiracies, but other than that, it really serves some people to have things as they were. And in order to keep things as they are, it's really important to get the people that would change it to be arguing amongst themselves in order to create the change. So if you look at something as simple as this long-term project that has been kind of going on for the last kind of 25 years to privatize the NHS. And it's well documented, all the things. That's what they're doing. You look at that big American company has just taken over the largest number of private GP practices in the country. It's just been taken over by an American healthcare conglomerate. Vast amounts of GP practices have been taken over as part of that agenda. Now, the best way to stop us talking about whether or not we want that is to get us having a bit of an argument about whether or not we should or shouldn't have vaccines. So we do all this, should this and that, and they do all that conversation. And while that conversation is happening, whether we should or we shouldn't, they say, oh, we seem to have by the way, we've seemed to have privatized the NHS. Hope you didn't mind. So again, it's like, the argument isn't whether we should or shouldn't have vaccines. The argument is whether or not we want to have a health service or not. And even the government's agenda, oh, every single nurse has to be vaccinated. Well, what does that do? It sets one nurse against another or one doctor against another to have that argument. So that, I think, is a bigger challenge. And the censorship is just a red herring to create more of that conflict that we're being censored. No, you're not. Yes, we are. It's drama. So the whole thing about this year and that second statement is we have to rise above the drama and the conflict, because if we don't, we will miss the big picture as to what's really going on here. And the only way you can, so in warfare and battles, the reason the generals were on top of the hill and you had to get the high ground, because that gave you perspective as to what was actually going on. So energetic and spiritually, we've just got to keep going up to keep the perspective, because if we don't, we're down in the ground and we're back in that other place.
Yeah, and we get caught up in the deliberate distractions.
You get caught up in it, and yeah. So China has vast amounts of social media going on with lots of stuff being posted all the time, and it's the same guys here, because it doesn't. If you're distracted playing games and doing stuff and drama and all these different stuff, then you can't create social change. So we have to watch out for. So I really kind of, sorry about this, because this is actually a really important question. If you look when we were having that big debate about Brexit in the Houses of Parliament, what Jacob Rees-Mogg did was he did a dead cat, as in he lay across the benches and it was all like this and laying across the benches like this. And every newspaper was talking about how disgraceful he was and why was a man in his position just lying across the benches. Not one bit of conversation was about whether or not we should or shouldn't do the things we said. We had a conversation about Jacob Rees-Mogg lying across the benches, and that was a dead cat. Dead cat kills conversations. So the higher you are, the know you say, okay, that's a dead cat. They're trying to put us off the conversation. Let's try and keep the conversation.
Yeah, like the dead cats partying.
Yeah, that's all the same stuff.
Yeah.
To come out to come out at this particular time to stop us seeing what's really going on. So don't keep high, keep above, keep the vibration. Someone has a different opinion, explore it. Why it's important to remember we're all different, all that conscious questions. And the higher we are collectively, the less we get pulled into that stuff. Yeah.
Thank you.
That was a really important question. Thank you for that.
Fantastic. Who else had their hand up, wanted to say something or ask a question, look at messages as well?
And we can go.
Tamara has a hand up.
Oh yeah, Tamara, go for it.
Can I share briefly something personal?
Yes, of course, please do.
I'm born a tiger.
Ah, congratulations.
1938.
Yeah.
October, also Scorpio, water. And I was a student. Born in the north. I went to Edinburgh University, and in 1962, actually almost exactly 60 years ago, I got up, I piled all my belongings in the middle of a living room, invited people to come and stay, whatever they wanted, and I fled from a lover and ran away all the way to London, and I never gone back.
Wow.
And now I'm in the process of discarding a lot of my stuff. Judy knows this. Discarding a lot of my stuff, divesting myself of property in London, and thinking of moving for some time to Greece or back to Scotland. So wow. I feel like really on the cover, really attuned with whatever and all the powers, all the points that you've raised, Nick, just speak to me very, very strongly. Good. So thank you for this. It's like an affirmation of something that I'm experiencing at a very personal level. So thank you for that moment. Yeah.
Absolutely my pleasure. And you've got you'll have a lot of wisdom, perspective to give the perspective we need to have. If we don't have perspective with this, then thank you for that. Thank you for that. And
thank you.
And talking about that wisdom, don't you think that the question about 1963, don't you think that in the last 60 years we have grown as humans and learnt lessons? Does that play into it, that we are not the same people reacting to that, apart from, we're going to react differently. We've grown. Yeah,
absolutely. If you look at that, in the 1960s, they weren't having spirituality shifting into a different phase. That was only just appearing as a thought, and we've really been exploring the difference between religion and spirituality, and we've been really exploring about us as beings that have some influence on the world and quantum physics, etc. So you're absolutely right, Gina. We're not in the
60
same.
years to play with those ideas. Was it Rachel Carson's her book about what was the book about the spring, about one of the first ecology books? Wasn't that 1957, 1960? We had 60 years of growing and doing harm for us to turn around and see. So we're in a much better place, aren't we, to face whatever.
Much better. We're much better.
Yeah. I love the fact that we're.
And in the 1960s, they were not that far out from 2 world wars, which was kind of humanity exploring what it was like to be at our very lowest. And we've had a period of time exploring what it's like to have a kind of a high vibrational state. Workplaces have meditation, you've got mindfulness GPs. You know what I mean? People are even eating brown bread, for God's sake. It's gone crazy. Megan, I can see your hand.
I just actually had a thought, so I wanted to say something. In my breakout room, the lovely woman I got to speak to mentioned wanting to see everybody get back to work. And then I had this thought that I obviously was not born in the 60s, but I've read things. Women were trying to also have their own sense of revolution in terms of getting out and getting into the workforce. And for a long, long time, women worked really hard to define their own power and their own place. in the workforce. And then through COVID, we've just recently seen a huge hit back against women. They were typically the ones to stay back at home, care for the kids, or lose their jobs, and first and foremost. So in a sense, we kind of repeated we're back in a way to women again having to get back out there and redefine their authority again in the workforce. But I would like to say too, over the noise of my children, that I hope that we're all growing, because if we're not, and we're just continually repeating themes, what would be the end game of that, of generations learning or not learning?
Well, we don't, because each cycle we go through, we do it as a kind of an elevation upwards. So we are always moving upwards within our spiritual and us as human beings. So we're not repeating the same cycle. We're just doing it. There are just similar things that we explore, but we explore them as different people, and we go above. And I'm going to say something. Am I going to say? Yeah, and I'm going to say there's something that I think is really, really important within this. So if you look at the 1950s and the 1960s, and particularly looking just after the war, there was a real reinvention, and the story of boxes explores this. There was a real kind of reinvention of a separation between men and women, saying, oh, women are like this and men are like this. Women are more caring and nurturing and more collaborative. Men are more individualistic and pushing. So this came out, this idea of masculine and feminine energy, and it became very separated out into these ideas. And the ideas came about because it really served the people that wanted to have women suppressed to have some view that they're in the home and they're nurturing, they're caring and doing this stuff because that's their energy and that's the nature and that's the feminine energy. And men are out there doing and this and that. And they did exactly the same in ancient China in 240 AD in ancient China. There was no separation between the energies of men and women, none whatsoever. There wasn't masculine energy or feminine energy. There was no separation. There was just these 5 energies. And then there was one particular emperor, and he had this book written, and what it was, the idea was that men are yang and women are yin. And what that then said was men are heavenly and above, and women are earthly and below. So men are divine and women are earthly. Men have this yang energy, and before that point, yin and yang had no gender association with it at all, none whatsoever. And it was a construct within that time in ancient China in order to suppress women, to have women below men, because before that there was an equality, but there was an idea, and then it went in this, and that idea is always brought out if you want to move women into a place of powerlessness as an idea. And that is a really dangerous game that we're going to be playing again about masculine and feminine energy, because it will create division and it will create boxes that women are in and boxes that men are in, and a separation between us and the placement of women within certain things. And however much you try and escape from the box and say women can do this, and et cetera, as soon as you have that idea, you have separation and you have hierarchy. And so even if you have like gendered professions that are more caring are lower paid. And what happens if you have gender possession? So there's layers to it. So that is a really, really dangerous thing to be talking about at the moment. It's masculine and feminine energy. Really dangerous.
Yeah. Well, it's what religion did to women too, right?
It's what religion did to women.
Yeah.
And that idea was created by men to suppress women. And I feel sad that it's adopted, because it was not never. Yeah. Anyway, it was a different subject.
Yeah, right. Thank you. Yeah.
It's a powerful subject to touch on, and one we could revisit at another time.
We could revisit.
Yeah.
Can I just share something? Yeah. Share something really interesting in this area. So we think testosterone. Okay. So we think testosterone. It's a male hormone. It's about aggression, testosterone. the latest research is that it's totally context based. What testosterone does is it makes you want to raise your status of whatever the status is within the culture. So if you have a culture of men that's very aggressive and you give them testosterone, they become more aggressive because that's what the status is about. But they did some interesting studies that they gave Buddhist monks where the culture and the status is based around how peaceful you are and how much you meditate. And when they gave them testosterone, they started to meditate more and become more peaceful because testosterone raises your status. They did testosterone, which was, I think this was a great idea. They gave testosterone to both men and women in an auction where you're meant to be showing kindness and buying. And the people that were given the most testosterone were buying the most things to show their generosity and their kindness. So it's all context based. And if society creates environments where men have a status around aggression, then their testosterone will make them more aggressive. But if their status and their culture is around kindness and love and meditation, then they will become more kind and loving meditating. It's totally context based.
It's very head bending.
Yeah, it is. It's a completely
bending idea.
Flip round.
Giving testosterone to monks and then competing with each other to be more peaceful.
Yeah. Well, they don't compete. They just, and it's the same as if you give a woman more estrogen and oxytocin when she has a young child, she will be more aggressive in her defense of that child because she has more estrogen and oxytocin.
Fascinating.
So interesting stuff.
It is. And again, another event. I think we're at 8:33. I really
yes, sorry.
We're coming in. No, do not apologize because we're all here. We've lost a couple of people probably needed to go, but we're all here. And I'm just going to thank you and say it's been wonderful. Do you want to say anything right at the end about what's coming up for you, a reminder you want to share with people before you leave?
Yeah, so I've got
Sunday and things.
Yeah, so I've got on Sunday, we've got like 3 hours where we're going to kind of really explore. We're going to be looking at your past, your present and your future. There are certain aspects of our past that will inhibit us from being fully in our power. And then I've also got a free little kind of mini series that I'm just bringing out at the moment with little short videos about how to handle this thing. So just engage with us. We've got lots of stuff kind of going on around
so we find you on the 5 Institute, which is simple.
Yeah, 5 Institute.
.org.
Com.
Okay. .com. I think if they put the 5 Institute in, they will find you. That is great. Yeah. And so much. And there's just so much to explore with you. I just love it. Love it all. So much to write down, so much to, and I know so much of it because for me it sits on the foundation of what I know in feng shui.
Yes.
I'm always learning something new because you know something and then you just see that same fact from a different angle. It makes it different, and that's what's so beautiful. You never stop learning and learning more. So a huge thank you on behalf of everybody. I'm going to do the gallery view so I can see everybody, and we're going to say thank you.